Hey, fifth graders. Welcome to Language Today. We're on pages 12 to 14. We're going to be talking about verb phrases. So remember, I introduced you to state of being verbs, which are am, is, are, was, were, be, being, and been. And we also talked about helping verbs. And I told you you'd need those along the way for the remainder of the school year and past the fifth, sixth, seventh grade, so on. You will always need to know these verbs. So the helping verbs, remember it includes am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, have, has, had, do, does, did, shall, will, should, would, may, might, must, can, could. And so I told you can go ahead and make your little song with it. We had a song that we used in class when we did that. I kind of demonstrated that for you, but please feel free to utilize your own tunes and your own beats. Just something to help you learn all of your verbs that you're going to need to be able to identify the state of being and the helping verbs. So let's get started with today's lesson. We're going to talk about verb phrases. So we talked about verbs individually. We talked about action verbs, things that you can actually do. And then we talked about state of being verbs. It's just being. I am here. So it's not actually doing anything. I'm just being here, right? So today we are going to talk about the verb phrases where we bring some of these helping verbs together, where they work together either independently with each other or with action verbs as well. So we'll look at that. And then we're going to determine whether our sentences have action verbs or state of being verbs. Okay, so a verb phrase is the main verb and its helping verbs. So it's the entire thing. That's what a verb phrase is. Okay, so if a verb phrase ends with a state of being verb, if a state of being verb is the last word in that phrase, then the entire verb is considered, the entire verb phrase, is considered state of being. However, if the last word in the verb phrase ends with an action verb, then it is considered an action verb, the entire phrase. Okay? So for example, she has been on the mission field for 20 years. We see that has been is the verb phrase. Well, been is the last word in that verb phrase. Therefore, the verb phrase has been is a state of being verb. Okay? Secondly, if the verb phrase ends with an action verb, then the whole phrase is action. I am finished with my homework. So finishing is something I can actually do, right? It's an action. I can finish. So I am finished with my homework. Am and finish are the two. It's a helping and a verb together. A helping verb and an action verb. Since finished is an action, it's something you can do, then the verb phrase am finished is an action phrase, okay? It's an action verb. So let's look at the two examples that I have. I chose number 1 from your exercise and number 15, a top and a bottom, so that we can show the contrast and we can see how to work these problems out. So please keep in mind that there are not 1, not 2, but 3 instructions. I'm going to need you to follow all 3 instructions. Some of you on the quiz, you didn't read the second instruction, so you didn't complete the quiz, and so you lost points. So please always pay attention to how many instructions the directions are giving you, okay? So we have 3 instructions. First it says, underline the verb phrase 2 times. Remember, verbs are always underlined twice, okay? The second instruction says to circle the helping verb, okay? Not the ending verb, not the action verb, not the being verb, but the helping verb. Remember that your state of being verbs can also act as helping verbs if it's combined with other words, okay? So we're going to look at that here. And then thirdly, it says write A in the blank if it's an action verb, write B in the blank if it's state of being verb, okay? So let's follow those directions. So first off, we have to identify what is the verb. Let's read the first sentence. Natalie had written her report the previous day. So what is happening in the sentence? What is going on? What is my verb? Had written, right? So here's my subject, Natalie. She did something. What did Natalie do? She had written. Okay, that's what she did. So we found had written to be our verb. So that's the first thing we did. We underlined the verb twice. Secondly, it says circle the helper. So which one of these two is a helping verb? Remember your helping verbs? Have, has, had, do, does, did, right? So we heard had. We're going to circle had as a helping verb. Okay? And then thirdly, we're going to write in the blank. Is this verb phrase an action phrase? Is it something we can do? Or is it a state of being? Does it end with am, is, are, was, were, be, being, or been? So we see that it ends with written, right? Had written. We know that writing is something that we can do. It's an action. So in our blank here, we're going to have an A for action. Okay? Then our last example. Obedience should be a main goal in our lives. What is the verb phrase? You can go through all of our helping verbs, action, state of being verbs, and see that should is one of our state of being, is one of our helping verbs. Be is also one of our helping verbs because state of being is also helping, remember? So we see that obedience, that's something, right? It's a thing. Obedience should be a main goal. There is no action. We're not doing anything, but it should be, right? And so since should comes first, it is considered the helper. Be is our state of being verb, okay? So being that the last word in this verb phrase ends with a state of being verb, then the whole phrase is a being phrase, a state of being, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so again, to be able to identify all of these, you will need to know all of your helping verbs. That will help you identify. If you need to turn back to page 10, where all of your helping verbs and your state of being verbs are, you are welcome to do that until you can memorize them. Just remember, we will have a quiz eventually on all of the state of being and helping verbs, okay? All right, so page 13, all you have to do here is identify the verb phrases. Now, there's something a little bit different about these particular sentences. A verb phrase here can be interrupted by another word in the middle. We usually call these adverbs, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, so there can be some words, word or words, between a verb phrase, and we have to be able to identify which words are part of the verb and which ones are not. Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples in our blue box at the top of page 13. Okay, so at the top of page 13, it says, excuse me, study the verb phrases in the following sentences. It says, did Mary and Joseph live in Nazareth or Bethlehem? Notice that there's a question. Usually when it's an interrogative sentence, your verb, your subject will be in the middle of your verb phrase. Okay, so get used to that. That happens very often with interrogative sentences. So my verb phrase is did live. Who or what did live? Mary and Joseph. That's the subject, right? So the subject is in the middle of the verb phrase did live. I could not see anything in the fog. Could see is my verb phrase. Not is an adverb. And remember, I'm not sure if everyone has had the lessons on negatives never being a part of your verb, but I know that for my prior class, we did go over those. We did touch on that. So it's just a reminder that negative words like not, in apostrophe T, never, nothing, no, those things are negative words that cannot be included as part of your verb phrase, okay? They're negative. So we see here that could see is the verb, not is just the adverb that's in the middle of the verb phrase, okay? So the next one, you should never disobey your parents. So see here again, we have a negative word, never. And never comes in between. It's the adverb that comes between should and obey. Okay, so should obey is my verb. The next one, would you pass the salt, please? Okay, so would pass is my verb phrase. Who am I talking to is you. So kind of the subject in the middle of the verb phrase again, right? May we have a snack before lunch? Interrogative sentence here. So may have again is my my verb phrase, and we is the subject that comes in the middle of the verb phrase when we're dealing with interrogative sentences. Okay, so with that being said, with you seeing the examples of how there can be words in the middle of verb phrases, you have to identify what the verb is, what your verb phrases are, and be able to underline the verb or verb phrases only, the parts of the verb phrase only. So let's look at number one. It says Jemima Boone, Francis, and I guess that's Betsy. Okay, Betsy were leisurely paddling up the river. So we have three people doing something. We have Jemima Boone, we have Francis, and we have Betsy. Now, what are they doing? They were leisurely paddling up the river. What is the verb phrase? Leisurely is an ly word. And again, last year I taught my students in the 4th grade that ly words are also adverbs, and adverbs cannot be a part of your verb phrase, right? And so leisurely is an adverb, should not be underlined. So we have were paddling. That is our verb phrase. So you will underline were, you will underline paddling. Okay? And then let's do another example. Let's look at number 2. Do you see those pretty flowers? Okay, that's number 2. Do you see those pretty flowers? Question mark. Remember, when we have a question, our verb phrase will surround our subject. So here's you is our subject, right? And do see is my verb phrase, okay? Do see. Do is my helper. See is my verb, okay? Because we can see if we had to label these, that would be an action, correct? Okay, so what you're going to do is go through Think A, and you will underline all of the verbs that is a part of the verb phrase. I will send you the answers for pages 12 and 13 so that you can check your work. You'll do the same thing with page 14 for the first part, Think A. It says 2 instructions. Draw 2 lines under the verbs. That includes verb phrases. Circle the helping words if it's a verb phrase. Circle the helper, right? You underline the whole verb, including the helper, but then you go back and circle only the helper, okay? All right, you'll do that part. And then Think B wants you to draw a line under the verbs twice, and then think of a different word you can use. So verbs can also be interchangeable sometimes. So like for this one, do you see those pretty flowers? I can say, did you view those pretty flowers? View and see are kind of the same thing. Did you observe those pretty flowers? So seeing and observing and viewing are synonymous words that you can use and interchange. So all it wants you to do is underline the verb twice, and then in the blank, write a different word you could use that means the same thing as the underlined verb, okay? So there could be plenty of answers, right? You might have one answer, someone has a different answer, but there are a plethora that we can choose from. And then I'll send you a copy for you to be able to check your work and see how close you were. And we can probably discuss that. Sorry that we missed our last Wednesday Zoom, but of course we were in a hurricane. There's nothing we can do about that. All right, and so finally, to let you know, there will be no Wednesday pre-recording because page 15 is for Wednesday and this is a quiz. So all you have to do is submit the quiz. I'll have a link for you to attach it, and then I'll grade it and put your grades in the system. And that's all that we have for today. Guys, if you need anything, please reach out. Okay? Thank you.